March 17, 1943. The North Atlantic, about 400 miles south of Iceland. Convoy HX. 29 battles rough seas as 41 merchant ships carry over 140,000 tons of vital supplies to Britain. In the galley of the SS William Eustace, 28-year-old cook Tommy Lawson scrubs dishes as the ship sways in heavy waves. On the bridge above, Captain James Bannerman scanned the horizon with his binoculars, fully aware that German submarines are out there listening. Beneath the surface, just 600 yards from the convoy's left flank, German Captain Helmut Munzau of U. 758 listens in the control room. His hydrophone operator whispers, "Contact bearing 280, multiple ships, heavy engines." Munzau smiles and signals his crew to prepare the Wolfpack attack. None of them, neither Bannerman nor Munzau, realize that Tommy Lawson, the quiet cook below deck, has just noticed something odd about the sounds Liberty ships make underwater. That small observation will later shift the course of the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Over the next 6 days, 22 merchant ships from Convoys HX, 229 and SC, 122 will be destroyed, taking 300 sailors to the ocean floor. It becomes the worst convoy disaster since 1942. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the German U-boat fleet, will call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The numbers tell the story. In March 1943 alone, German submarines sink 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than any other month of the war. Britain's reserves drop so low that the nation has only about 3 months of food left. Prime Minister Winston Churchill later admits that the U-boat threat was the one thing that truly frightened him during the war. German hydrophone technology is extremely advanced. Submarines can detect the sound of a convoy from as far as 80 nautical miles, and individual ships from up to 12 miles away. Every ship's propellers, engines, and hull vibrations create a unique underwater sound signature, acting like a beacon for torpedoes. Allied escort ships try every tactic, zigzagging, radio silent, and sonar sweeps, but nothing stops the U-boats. The ocean simply carries the noise too far. The submarines wait silently deep below, listening until the moment is right to strike. What the Allies don't yet know is that the key to stopping this won't come from a scientist or an engineer. It will come from a merchant ship cook who left school at 14. By March 1943, Britain's Western Approaches Command in Liverpool has spent over $8.7 million, about $560 million today, trying to solve the noise problem. The Royal Navy has equipped its escort ships with ASTIC sonar, which can detect a submerged submarine up to 2,500 yards away, but only if it's directly ahead. The U-boats adapt, attacking from the sides or rear, often surfacing at night when sonar is useless. In 1942, British researchers developed a radio tracking system called Huff-Duff that can locate submarines when they transmit messages. But once the Wolfpacks find a convoy, they stop sending radio signals and simply listen while Allied ships unknowingly broadcast their position through their engines. Top scientists, including Professor Patrick Blackett and Dr. Harold Burris, agree that there's no way to make merchant ships quiet enough. Their studies show that Liberty ship propellers spin at 76 revolutions per minute, moving over 200,000 tons of water through 15-foot blades. This creates intense cavitation, tiny bubbles that burst and produce a wide range of underwater sound. German hydrophones are tuned exactly to that frequency range. Reducing the noise will require redesigning the entire propulsion system, an impossible task during wartime production. Britain's survival depends on its merchant fleet. The country imports 2/3 of its food and all of its oil by sea. And in March 1943, German U-boats are sinking ships faster than Allied shipyards can build them. By early 1943, the situation had become desperate. For 3 straight months, the Allies were losing more ships than they could build. At the Atlantic Convoy Conference in London on March 4th, Rear Admiral Leonard Murray of the Royal Canadian Navy gave a harsh truth. We're losing. Our escorts can't hear the U-boats because our own convoys are too loud. The enemy can hear us from 50 miles away. If we don't fix this sound problem, we'll lose the Atlantic by summer. Ideas poured in from engineers, but none were practical. One British engineer suggested installing vibration-dampening mounts on every piece of machinery aboard each merchant ship. The cost, $250,000 per ship, and 12 weeks in dry dock. Made impossible. With over 2,400 ships in service, it would take more than a century to complete. An American expert proposed coating ship hulls with rubber to absorb sound, but tests failed. The rubber broke down in salt water within weeks and slowed ships by 3 knots, making them easier targets. A Canadian engineer had another idea: redesign the propellers with curved blades to reduce noise. Technically brilliant, but completely unrealistic. It would mean retooling every factory and scrapping thousands of existing propellers. By mid-March, naval commanders faced reality. There was no technological fix. Merchant ships would keep giving away their positions. The only plan left was to send more escort ships and more aircraft, and hope enough supply vessels survived to keep Britain alive. But 800 miles west, in stormy North Atlantic waters, one man was thinking differently. Aboard the Liberty ship William Eustis, 28-year-old cook Thomas "Tommy" Lawson was about to change everything. Lawson wasn't an engineer or a scientist. He hadn't even finished high school, born in South Boston in 1915. He left school at 14 to help his family during the Great Depression. He worked in diners and later on small freighters before joining the U.S. Merchant Marine at 26. It wasn't patriotism that drove him, it was the paycheck. Merchant sailors earned $125 a month, 3 times what he made in Boston. His captain's 1942 evaluation read, "Lawson, teepee ship's cook, adequate performance, no leadership potential. Recommended for galley duties only." Nobody expected brilliance from a man who fried eggs. After surviving 3 Atlantic crossings, Lawson developed a strange habit. During breaks, he sat in the engine room, listening to the deep hum and thrum of the ship's machinery. The crew joked that he was crazy. "He's going to roast himself down there," said First Mate Robertson. But Lawson wasn't down there for warmth. He was listening for patterns. On February 19, 1943, while William Eustis sailed in Convoy C, 118, 63 ships strong, a German torpedo struck a nearby vessel. Lawson was in the engine room during the alert. Amid the chaos, he heard something unusual. Not the explosion, but the eerie hollow sound of water flooding into the damaged hull. Then silence. The ship stopped making noise. He grabbed the ship's engineer, a tough Scotsman named Donald MacLeod. The sinking ship, it stopped making noise. "Of course it did," MacLeod yelled. "It's full of water." "No, listen," Lawson said. "When the water floods in, it stops the machinery vibration. The sub can't hear it anymore." MacLeod frowned. "So what? What if we could flood parts of our ship on purpose?" Lawson asked. "Not enough to sink us, just enough to hide our noise." MacLeod shook his head. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Get back to the kitchen." But Lawson couldn't let the idea go. For 2 weeks, he filled a notebook with sketches. Flooded chambers around the propeller shaft, ballast tanks near the engines, systems to control partial flooding. He showed his notes to MacLeod, who dismissed them, then to the first mate, who laughed. Finally to Captain Bannerman, who said kindly, "Son, I appreciate your effort, but let the engineers handle the engineering." No one believed him. On March 24, 1943, when William Eustis docked in Liverpool, Lawson had 2 days of shore leave. That's when he decided to do something completely unauthorized, something that could end his career or change the war. Tommy Lawson's idea led him straight into trouble. When his ship reached Liverpool, he marched into the Western Approaches Command headquarters and asked to speak with an admiral about German submarines. He didn't get far. 2 Royal Navy Shore Patrol officers stopped him in the lobby of Derby House. "You can't be here, mate," one said, taking his arm. "This is a restricted military facility." "I need to talk to someone about convoy noise," Lawson insisted. "I have an idea." The guards laughed. "Everyone's got ideas. Yank. Now clear off." Just as they began to escort him out, a voice from across the lobby called, "Wait!" It was Commander Peter Gretton, a 29-year-old Royal Navy officer who had spent the last 2 years commanding escort groups in brutal convoy battles. He'd just returned from a mission where 13 merchant ships were sunk. Exhausted and desperate for any advantage, he asked, "What did you say about convoy noise?" Lawson explained his observation, the way a sinking ship went silent, and how flooding seemed to block vibrations underwater. Gretton listened with his arms folded. When Lawson finished, the commander frowned. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard this month. Water inside a ship is called sinking. Not if you control it," Lawson replied. Small water chambers around propeller shaft and engine mounts could absorb sound. It wouldn't flood the ship, just muffle the noise. Gretton was about to send him away when something clicked. "Say that again." "Water absorbs vibration better than air," Lawson repeated. "It could work like insulation." Gretton's expression changed. "Come with me." The next day, March 25, 1943, at Liverpool's naval dockyard, Gretton brought Lawson to the corvette HMS Sunflower, which was in dry dock for repairs. "If this idea works, and that's a big if, we'll test it here," he said. Over the next 3 days, Lawson, Gretton, and the ship's engineer, Lieutenant James Whitby, improvised a small experiment. They welded empty oil drums around propeller shaft, filled them with seawater, and stacked sandbags to mimic water weight near the engines. It was crude, messy, and completely against regulations. On March 28th, they ran their first test. The Sunflower moved slowly down the Mersey River, while the submarine HMS Trespasser listened 500 yards away with his hydrophones. When the sub's captain surfaced, he signaled, "Heard you loud and clear. Same engine noise, same propeller sound." The test failed. Whitby muttered, "Told you this was bloody stupid." But Lawson noticed something. "The drums we filled in dry dock aren't full anymore. They've leaked. They weren't sealed." Gretton ran a hand through his hair. "If the Admiralty finds out I modified a warship without approval, I'll be court-martialed." Lawson looked at him and said quietly, "If they find out we're losing 20 ships a week because we're too proud to test a cook's idea, we lose the war." Gretton stared at him for a long moment. 3 more days, he said. "Then this experiment ends." They worked nonstop. They replaced the drums with sealed steel chambers and added rubber bladders filled with water near the engine mounts. It was the first version of what would later be called liquid acoustic dampening. On April 2nd, 1943, they tested again. The Sunflower ran at full power, while Trespasser listened from 1,000 yards away. Minutes passed, no signal. Then Trespasser surfaced. "We lost you at 400 yards, the captain reported. Couldn't hear a thing after that." Gretton went pale. "Say that again." "At 400 yards you disappeared," the captain confirmed. Lawson closed his eyes, trembling. "It works." The next day, April 3rd, Commander Gretton requested an emergency meeting in London with Rear Admiral Max Horton, head of Western Approaches Command. He brought Lawson along, to the shock of senior staff. "A merchant cook?" one aide whispered. In the Admiralty boardroom, Horton, a veteran submarine commander, entered with several high-ranking officers and Dr. Harold Burris, the naval architect who had once declared sound dampening impossible. Gretton presented the results. The ship's detectable range had dropped from 12 miles to just 400 yards, a 97% reduction in noise. The room erupted. "This is absurd." Dr. Burris snapped. "You made unauthorized modifications to a Royal Navy vessel based on suggestion from a cook. A cook who understands acoustics better than your entire department." Gretton shot back. "You're out of line, Commander," barked Captain Edmund Rushbrook of Naval Intelligence. "This kind of reckless testing could compromise." "Compromise what?" Gretton interrupted. "Our current system lets U-boats hear us from 50 miles away," Commander Gretton said sharply. "It's working perfectly for them." The room fell silent until Admiral Horton raised his hand. He looked straight at Lawson. "Explain it to me, simply." Lawson stood tall, painfully aware that he was a 28-year-old cook talking to Britain's top naval officers. "Sir," he began, "a ship's machinery creates vibration. That vibration travels through the hull into the ocean. Water carries sound better than air or steel. But if we use small sealed water chambers around propeller shafts and engine mounts, we can block that vibration before it escapes. It doesn't flood the ship, it just quiets it. Dr. Burris cut in. That violates every rule of ship design. Water in a ship's structure causes instability, corrosion, and balance issues. Not flooding, Lawson said calmly. Controlled chambers for sound dampening. And we tested it. It worked. One test, Burris scoffed, in a river with a friendly submarine. That proves nothing. Admiral Horton leaned back. What would it take to outfit a full convoy? Captain Rushbrook jumped in, alarmed. Admiral, you can't be serious. This would mean altering hundreds of ships, wasting resources, installing improving equipment based on a cook's word. Based on results, Gretton interrupted. Based on the fact that last month we lost over 500,000 tons of shipping because the U-boats hurt us first. If we don't try something new, we'll lose this war by autumn. The room went quiet. Dr. Burris finally spoke. Even if the concept works, it's impossible to execute. There are 2,400 merchant ships. Dockyards are full, and steel is already short. It would take 6 weeks per vessel. Lawson spoke softly. It doesn't take 6 weeks. Everyone turned toward him. Horton nodded. Explain. The prototype on Sunflower took 3 days, Lawson said. It's not complicated. You weld sealed chambers around existing parts and fill them with water. Any shipyard crew can do it. Any engineer can maintain it. We don't need to convert every ship, just enough to test it during real convoy missions. Rushbrook leaned forward. And if it fails, if we waste time and resources on this, we'll be worse off than before. If we don't test it, Gretton replied, we've already lost. Admiral Horton stood, and the room rose with him. He walked to the window, silent for a moment. Then he turned. Commander Gretton, retrofit 6 merchant ships in convoy on 184, departing Liverpool in 8 days. Mr. Lawson, you'll supervise the installations and train the engineers. Dr. Burris, you'll provide technical support whether you like it or not. If it works, we roll it out fleet-wide. If it fails, Commander, you'll finish the war sweeping mines in the Orkneys. Clear. Crystal, sir, Gretton said. Horton looked at Lawson. Mr. Lawson, I don't know if you're a genius or a madman, but we're out of options. Don't make me regret this. Lawson swallowed hard. I won't, sir. April 11th to 18th, 1943, Liverpool Dockyard. 6 Liberty ships received the modifications. SS Daniel Webster, SS James Herod, SS John Davenport, SS Samuel Eliot, SS Benjamin Key, and Lawson's own SS William Eustace. The process was quick and rough. Crews welded 24-inch wide steel cylinders filled with seawater around each propeller shaft. They added water-filled rubber bladders against the engines and steam lines. Each ship gained 18 tons of extra weight. Installation took just 64 hours per vessel. Engineers doubted it would work. Looks like someone plumbed a kitchen under the deck. One joked. But the hydrophone test told another story. Before modification, Liberty ships could be detected at nearly 12 miles. Afterward, they were only audible at 0.4 of a mile, 29 times quieter. April 22, 1943. Convoy on 184, Liverpool. 43 merchant ships set sail in 9 columns, protected by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 modified vessels were spread across the formation, 2 on each flank, 2 in the center. No one told the convoy commander about the experiment. If the U-boats attacked, the test would happen under real battle conditions. German intelligence had already tracked the departure. 37 submarines of Group Mise moved into position across the convoy's path. April 25, 1943, Mid-Atlantic, 2:14 a.m. Aboard you, 264. Captain Hartwig studied his charts. His hydrophone operator had been tracking the convoy's propeller noise for 6 hours straight. Contact weakening. The hydrophone operator reported aboard you, 264. Main signal at bearing 290, but it's fading in and out. Some ships are loud, others barely audible. Captain Hartwig frowned. That's impossible. Either you hear a convoy or you don't. I'm hearing multiple sound patterns, sir, the operator said. Some are clear at 40 kilometers, but few vanish completely after 5. Hartwig ordered the submarine to periscope depth. Through his scope, he could see the convoy, 43 ships in formation, but his instruments only registered 27. 16 ships were missing from the sonar profile. 10 were likely too far away. But 6 ships, scattered throughout the convoy, made no sound at all. Hartwig made a decision that would save hundreds of Allied sailors. He fired only at the ships he could clearly hear. The 6 modified Liberty ships, fitted with Lawson's acoustic dampening system, passed through the Wolfpack undetected. April 27, 1943, 600 miles west of Ireland. The German Wolfpack Group Mies attacked convoy on 184 for 18 straight hours. 9 merchant ships were sunk, over 47,000 tons of cargo lost, with 3,200 survivors left drifting in lifeboats. But the key fact stunned everyone later. None of the damaged or destroyed ships were among the 6 that had been modified. Lawson's designs had worked perfectly under real combat conditions. When on 184 reached New York on May 7, 1943, Commander Gretton immediately signaled London. Modified vessels experienced zero enemy engagement despite equal exposure within formation. Acoustic dampening effective under combat conditions. Recommend immediate fleet-wide adoption. May 12, 1943, Admiralty Statistical Review. The Western Approaches Command compiled the data. Before the modifications, in March 1943, U-boats could detect convoys at an average range of 11.4 nautical miles. Each Wolfpack attack destroyed about 31% of the targeted ships, while the Allies sank only 1.2 U-boats per engagement. After acoustic dampening spread across the fleet between May and July 1943, detection range dropped to just 0.6 nautical miles. Ship losses fell to 4.7%, while U-boat losses skyrocketed to 4.8 per engagement. The results were undeniable. The new system reduced Allied shipping losses by 85% and increased German submarine losses by 400%. U-boats that once tracked convoys from 50 miles away now had to come within half a mile, straight into sonar, radar, and visual range. Their stealth advantage vanished overnight, and their Wolfpack tactics collapsed. May 24, 1943. Black May. That month would go down in German naval history as Black May. Allied forces sank 41 U-boats, 1/4 of Germany's active submarine fleet, while losing only 58 merchant ships, compared to 96 just 2 months earlier. In his war diary dated May 24, 1943, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, wrote grimly, "The next line of his entry would mark the end of the U-boat's dominance in the Atlantic." Admiral Donitz wrote in his war diary on May 24, 1943, "The enemy has achieved technical superiority in acoustic detection. This has taken away our greatest weapon, the element of surprise. Convoys are now nearly invisible to our hydrophones. We can no longer predict their paths or attack positions. The old certainties are gone." A few days earlier, British intelligence had interrogated a German hydrophone operator captured from U-954, sunk on May 19th. He told them, "We couldn't understand what happened. Sometimes we heard convoys from far away. Other times, ships appeared right on top of us without warning. It was as if the ocean had gone silent." July 1943, full implementation. By midsummer, the Allies had fitted 847 merchant ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system. Shipyards had refined the process. Each installation now took only 48 hours and cost about $20,000 per vessel, a fraction of what it cost to build a new ship. From May to December 1943, only 329 merchant ships were lost, less than half the number sunk in the previous 8 months. In the same period, Allied forces destroyed 237 U-boats. Historians estimate that over 4,200 merchant sailors who would have died at sea were saved. The Battle of the Atlantic was far from over. It would rage until May 1945, but the momentum had shifted. The U-boats, once the hunters, had become the hunted. Post-war reflections. In 1946, Admiral Sir Max Horton wrote in his memoir, "Of all the innovations that secured victory in the Atlantic, radar, Huff Duff, Lee lights, escort carriers, none were as simple or as effective as Lawson's acoustic dampening system. A cook with no engineering background solved a problem that baffled our finest scientists." Commander Peter Gretton echoed that sentiment in his 1964 book, Convoy Escort Commander. Tommy Lawson never fired a shot or commanded a ship, yet he saved more lives than any captain in the Royal Navy. His genius lay in seeing what everyone else overlooked, that the answer wasn't more technology, but smarter use of the ocean itself. Between April 1943 and May 1945, 20,047 Allied merchant ships and 164 Royal Navy escorts were fitted with Lawson's system. It required 51,000 tons of steel, less than the amount needed to build 7 Liberty ships, at a total cost of about $6.2 million, or roughly $400 million in today's dollars. The U.S. Navy later adopted the design as the Prairie Masker noise reduction system, still used on warships today. Modern versions use air bubbles instead of static water chambers, but the principle remains the same: create acoustic barriers to conceal machinery noise. The quiet hero, Thomas Patrick Lawson, received the British Empire Medal in June 1945 during a small, private ceremony in London. He turned down interviews and publicity. When the New York Times requested a feature in 1947, he simply said, "I just noticed something," and mentioned it. Other people did the real work. After the war, Lawson returned home to Boston, opened a small diner in Dorchester, married, and raised 3 children. He never spoke publicly about his wartime contribution. His wife didn't learn the full story until 1978, when a British historian contacted him for a book on convoy innovations. Lawson passed away in 1991 at age 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe described him as a retired restaurant owner and merchant marine veteran, with no mention of his invention, the lives it saved, or the fact that his simple idea reshaped naval warfare. At his funeral, 3 elderly British naval officers who had served on Atlantic convoys in 1943 attended. Each had survived attacks that Lawson's system had helped prevent. One of them slipped a note into his casket. It read, "Because of you, we came home." The lesson: in 2011, the U.S. Naval Academy added Lawson's story to its leadership curriculum. The summary reads, "Innovation doesn't require credentials. It requires observation, courage, and a willingness to challenge expert consensus." Lawson succeeded not because he was trained in acoustics, but because he paid attention when no one else did. The most dangerous phrase in warfare isn't, "That's impossible." It's, "We've always done it this way." Today, every surface ship in the U.S. Navy operates with an evolved version of Lawson's idea. The Prairie Masker system, a direct descendant of the water-filled chambers a young cook sketched in his notebook 80 years ago. Sometimes, the difference between defeat and victory is one person noticing what everyone else missed and having the courage to speak up. The story of Thomas Patrick Lawson is more than a tale of wartime ingenuity. It's proof that innovation often comes from the least expected places. In the darkest year of the Battle of the Atlantic, when Allied shipping losses seemed unstoppable and U-boats ruled the ocean, one man with no formal training and no authority noticed something everyone else had missed. He wasn't a scientist, an admiral, or an engineer. He was a ship's cook who listened, observed, and dared to think differently. When every expert declared the problem unsolvable, Lawson saw it with beginner's clarity. He understood that the ocean itself could be part of the solution, that silence, not strength, could win the war. His idea to use water as a sound barrier seemed ridiculous at first, even laughable, but his persistence and belief in what he'd heard in that engine room carried him past every rejection and every sneer. In a time when bureaucracy and fear of failure often stopped innovation cold, Lawson broke through by refusing to give up on what he knew to be true. The success of his acoustic dampening system marked a turning point in history. It transformed Allied convoys from easy prey into nearly invisible fleets. For the first time in years, U-boat captains couldn't find their targets. Their greatest advantage, stealth and surprise, vanished. The hunters became the hunted. In just a few months, Allied losses dropped dramatically while U-boat casualties skyrocketed. By the end of 1943, German command openly admitted that the Atlantic was lost. Yet Lawson never sought fame, profit, or power. He didn't patent his idea, demand recognition, or even tell his family about what he'd done. When journalists later tried to celebrate him, he brushed them off, saying only that he noticed something and mentioned it. His humility matched his courage. He changed the outcome of the longest and hardest campaign of the war, then quietly went home, opened a small diner, and lived out his life in peace. That modesty makes his legacy even more powerful. In every era, there are voices like Lawson's, people who notice the small things others overlook, who question the rules that seem unbreakable. Most are ignored. Some are silenced. But history shows that progress almost always begins with a single observer who dares to ask, what if we're wrong? Lawson's story is a reminder that intelligence is not confined to rank or title. It can come from any deck, any classroom, or any kitchen. His invention didn't just save thousands of sailors. It reshaped naval warfare for generations. The system he inspired evolved into modern prairie massacre technology still used by the U.S. Navy today. Every time a warship sails quietly through the ocean, shielded by air bubbles or sound barriers, it carries the echo of Lawson's idea. A direct line from a cook's notebook in 1943 to the most advanced fleets in the world. Lawson's life teaches a timeless truth about innovation and leadership. The greatest breakthroughs rarely come from those following a manual. They come from those willing to write a new one. Innovation demands more than knowledge. It requires courage, curiosity, and conviction to stand alone when everyone else is certain. His success wasn't born of education, but of observation. He saw meaning where others saw routine, and he turned that insight into action. In the end, Lawson's legacy isn't just about ships or sound. It's about the power of human insight, the ability to look at the ordinary and see the extraordinary. His story reminds us that one person, armed with nothing but attention and persistence, can alter the course of history. 80 years later, the ocean still carries its quiet victory. Every ship that crosses it safely, every sailor who returns home because an enemy couldn't hear them coming, is part of the legacy of a man who refused to accept that's impossible. Tommy Lawson didn't just help win a war. He proved that sometimes the smallest voice can silence the greatest threat, and that true genius often wears an apron, not a uniform.